as we've been discussing ways to equip the church, one thing that comes up frequently is making sure we have more voices involved in the conversation, representing kind of the breadth of the church. When I say the breadth, I think about like every kindred, tribe, tongue, and nation. And so making sure that we don't think about issues of life and the image of God just from one particular perspective, whether American or whether particular ethnic group or racial group. And so we're going to engage some conversation around these issues with some different voices, some highlighting some what in our context would be minority voices that stand for life and want to engage these matters as well. I'm going to start out with you, Cherilyn. Can you share a little about what you mean when you have said that we need to advocate for racial equity from conception? How are both of those terms, racial equity, related to pro-life issues?
Yeah, sure. So we tend to look at racial issues and abortion only in terms of pregnancy and abortion rates. As a pro-life group, we have to put the emphasis on the word life and understand that when we're talking about a specific race group and their numbers and their tendency to participate in abortion choices more than any other group, we have to be willing to then deconstruct the racism everywhere else. And what we have seen is that we are hyper vigilant about talking about, specifically saving Black babies, but we've been very deaf about hearing the needs of the Black community outside of the womb and pregnancy. And so what we need to do is we need to tie in the equity of the racial issues that we see in this country and that we have been on the spot for the past 3 years in particular, and take those and then connect them to the womb. And I think once we do that, we will have more buy-in, in particular from the Black community, based on our consistency and our more circular and holistic thinking about the issue.
Thank you. This is a global issue, and people talk about this on many levels. So Annie, you have said in some of your writing that your pro-life convictions were shaped by your mom's personal story as an immigrant and a single mother. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about those with us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share. My mom and I and my sister immigrated here in 1987. I was 12, my sister was 11. It was a very trying time, very humbling, because we essentially had to start our lives all over again. And we share one bedroom inside of my at my uncle, my aunt's house. And she struggled to provide for the two of us. And we had to learn a brand new language. I didn't even know my alphabet then. So it was definitely struggle from all sides, from a cultural perspective, from an economical perspective, and in the home too, it wasn't the safest. My uncle ended up being not so godly. And so with all those struggles, I saw her strength and her faith unwavering, in the sense where she would cry herself to sleep, but she would say, the greatest testing of our faith is often experienced in the darkest hours of our lives. So with that, we were able to push through, and she was able to, soar and thrive and blossom, And so she really hit all of the cylinders in terms of overcame all of the objections, if you will, that the pro-choice side have identified as why you cannot be successful as a mom because of economical, because of cultural, or language barrier. But she overcame all of those things. So with her, she is definitely a role model that says I can do it. And she is not a she's a very shy person. She's very meek, but through her strength, it's in her faith and her her just continue to plow through, to push through, and that steady force of effort to just bring the day-to-day into our existence, and she didn't mind working 12 hours, 15 hours. She did not mind, continuing to be dateless, because my father was very absent in our lives, and she just focused on my sister and I, and she wanted to make sure she doesn't bring an external force that will upset the apple cart. So she just, pushed through. And so she did not have a man that was with her. She did not have the financial backing. She did not have the language or the educational background that would define success in today's world. But she is so successful today, and my sister and I could not be more grateful, right? But the other reason why I felt the need to switch over, change over my career from 22 years in a secular and joining pro-life was because one thing that I did notice that didn't happen in my mom's strength is her voice in an abortion topic or pro-life topic, because Asian culture as a whole is fairly private when it talks about sexuality, when it's topic about sexuality, abortion. It has this very shameful context to it. So because of the absence of those communications at home, even though we grew up as Christian families, it really avoided the topic when it came about my own unplanned pregnancy journey in college. And because I saw my mom's strength, I saw how much she was dealing with, I interpreted in my own head. I did not want to upset the apple cart. I did not want to bring further burden to her. And this is not one of those things that we want to bring shame to the family. So I secretly did a thing and didn't tell her about it until, 2 decades later. And when she found out, she was just like, why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you talk with me? Even though she is my rock and everything. But in that one thing, I didn't see that it was okay to burden her with it. So I wanted to create a different narrative to allow the Asian community to be more open about topic as such, but also for my own teenage daughter. I want her to know that she can come to me for all topics and nothing is off limit. And I think in those communication is when we can tackle the abortion issue holistically. It's to have a healthy platform that starts at home, because in the absence of communication, that's when you give birth to paranoia. And paranoia allows us to do so many things that are unthinkable. So in order for abortion to be unthinkable, we need to start the communication from home. So.
Wow. A lack of communication leads to paranoia. Wow. Yeah.
And I was paranoid, for many reasons,
Yes, wow. Sha'ron, as someone whose work has taken you around the world, literally, can you share what it looks like to speak for human dignity internationally? We have a lot of people that come to the United States, and so we often think about in an immigrant context, but this is a global matter as well.
Yes, and thinking of human life in that aspect, I think it's important for every human being to understand that God created us on purpose, for purpose. Therefore, every human life, without regard to race, gender, socioeconomic status, political affiliation, religious preference, gender, mental, intellectual capacity, has to be made aware that their life is important. And so every human being should treat that life with dignity and respect, from the womb all the way to the tomb. So it internationally, I'll take from our Declaration of Independence. We have an inalienable right to live, pursue happiness, free from prejudice, social injustice, putting stigmas on individuals. And you know, in listening to you, so often people that come from other countries need to understand it doesn't matter where you come from. That life is important. And it is worthy of existence freely.
Yeah. Cherilyn, let me hone in on your earlier answer. In your region of the country and your engagement for years now, have you found that people are more prone to a tight kind of discussion versus kind of thinking broadly about the issues? Because you spoke about trying to speak of it in a holistic manner.
Right. I think it really depends on background and where an individual comes from. When I was in Afghanistan, it depended upon what little sector you were in. When I was in Saudi Arabia, it depended upon your gender. And when I was in Qatar, it was your gender. In India, it was complexion. And so when you come to the United States, it's all of those things. I think so often we bring with us our experiences and where we come from, and that's what drives our perspective over everything. Our where we come from and our experiences drive us to act and react in the manner in which we act.
Yeah. So Cherilyn, you have written about institutional matters, systematic matters, but I think in a lot of people's minds, when we talk about this issue, they perhaps thinking about one particular woman on one particular street in one particular clinic. So why would you suggest, and maybe what are some avenues into people kind of thinking more broadly, as you were speaking earlier?
Yeah. So when we think historically about even Margaret Sanger, right, that's our go-to kind of how we know the abortion industry is racist, is the founder of Planned Parenthood was a eugenicist. This is not a secret. It's public knowledge. You can Google it. But I think where we have fallen short is that we have limited ourselves to just that information. And we haven't opened up the doors and kind of expanded the knowledge what else was going on in the country simultaneously when these things were happening. And so when we think about redlining, which was government funded housing discrimination that we still see the effects of today, just like we're still seeing the fruit that Margaret Sanger planted, you know, from the tree she planted back then. We still see the same fruit. These cities are still segregated and there's still poverty there. And where do we go when we want an abortion in the Black community? We go to the Black community because that's where it is, because it is all tied together. It is like the human body. If we look at our legal system, if we look at our healthcare system, we're touting from the rooftops about infant mortality in the Black community, maternal mortality in the Black community. These things are not individual. It is a body that was created for the same purpose, to limit and eventually extinguish the Black race. And if we don't start stepping back and allowing individuals to come tie those in with the fear of having difficult conversations, being made uncomfortable, you can hold on to your beliefs. I'm a Christian. I believe that everybody's made in God's image. I believe that everyone has the right to life. You're not going to change that. You're not going to change that. So me having a difficult conversation about something, a belief, is not going, or an opinion is not going to change my belief. And I think that once we all, as believers and pro-life advocates and those who care about life in that way, are willing to come to the table and hold on to our beliefs, but lay our opinions on the line and say, help me sort this out. even if it makes me uncomfortable, even if it means that, maybe my friendship groups will change, maybe some other things that I do, at the church I go to may change. We have to be willing to do that. That is how we're going to change the culture from within to start valuing life. If we start to look at a historical perspective of how did we get here?
How were these lives valued in the past? And certainly in American history, you can see how Black lives have been valued or devalued. In the 19th century, turning over to the 20th century, you can see how Asian lives have been valued or devalued. Wow. Let me ask you a question. Ronnie, can you give some examples of some international work that you've done?
Yes, definitely. In Afghanistan, I laced with the Egyptian Field Hospital to bring Afghan women from their different tribes to a military installation to get health care for the very first time. We had women that walked.
Let me clarify. You said for the very
first time.
First time.
Very first time. We had women that walked 8 to 12 miles to see a medical doctor. Now, mind you, it was overcoming a great deal of stigma. Some of them came threat of their lives because their husbands controlled them. But to see them come and get the medical care that they need, and even to bring their children, to me, that was just life-changing. Also, to be able to go into communities where they didn't let young women go to school, but to build a school, and it was relatively inexpensive. The first schools that we built, they blew them up. The Taliban actually blew them up. And so we had to engage with them actively to find out why. Well, they didn't blow them up because we were letting the young girls come in. They blew them up because we didn't allow anyone in their community to help build with it. So I think understanding a culture when you go in and getting appropriate buy-in is how you will move forward. And that's critical even in today, coming to the table and getting an understanding as to why certain individuals act or react in the manner in which they do.
So a why issue, we've said there's racial issues we need to think about when someone might think abortion, when they might not think it is unthinkable or unnecessary. But there are also like economic issues. And you've written and you've thought about employment and pay issues and other things like that sometimes provide economic challenges for women. What would you say about those issues that could form work issues that could inform us thinking about the whole issue of life?
Yeah, in the workplace, people talk about inequality with minority pay or minority promotions. But when I think about workplace minority, it really isn't about ethnicity. It's about women who have chosen life, women who are moms are the minorities. And it's going to become more minority if the abortion narrative continues at the rate that it's going. It's time that we really rethink how workplaces should accommodate women who are expecting, women who are moms, who are single moms, who have multiple kids. With the technology that we have today, there's no reason why a mother and a baby in a boardroom cannot coexist. We pride ourselves in, creating great work culture. At Save the Storks, what we do is that you will see babies on Zoom calls. You will see, women who are working remotely, but building beautiful impact plans and strategic initiatives to help change the world. There's no reason why other organizations can't rethink how they would accommodate women who, who's pregnant or who's decided to choose life, because it is that narrative that a woman feel like, I have to take a back seat now because I am pregnant, or get an abortion so that I can continue with my, career path. It should not be one or the other. She should be able to choose her baby and her career too. And as long as the performance doesn't suffer. And studies have shown, women are, multitask masters, so why not give them that leverage, leveraging their skill set so that they can multitask, they can be there for their babies and their career and drive great results. And the companies will find that they will have a huge untapped resources to tap into by opening up that channel to embrace moms with children to coexist in the workplace, rethink how the workplace can build a different platform for these women to thrive, and to rethink how interviews should go. Childcare is extremely expensive. That's just one aspect of the problem to solve. But if we can help with the childcare aspect in a way, why not? So there's so many ways to rethink the workplace today, and women who chooses life should not be in the minorities. And that is what's happening with the way the abortion narrative is trying to paint, that you can only have your career if you don't choose motherhood. And that should not be the statement at all, because it's inaccurate, and we need to put the burden also on the employers too.
I saw your mic go up. So I think you've thought about workplace issues. So did you have a thought on that? And why are you thinking, or why are you getting that together? I have, as a pastor, I have seen the aerobics, because not the gymnastics and the creativity and the innovation and just just a thousand things that sisters have had to think about as regards career and work. That brothers just didn't have to think about. And I've been amazed, and they've come out at certain places and like, wow. But like, if the brothers' road was like, I'll just use an example of like being a principal. If the brothers' road to being a principal was like this, a sister in the congregation I pastored who was in education, and then she wanted to like have 3 or 4 years with her kids, and then she came back into this, and then she did. So those are two principals, two high school principals. Yeah, but the road was like, woo, drastically different. And so, are there ways that can be affected, or at least considered?
Yeah, just because I feel like
Yeah, no.
there were so many consistencies as we sit here and talk, and this idea that as women, as the life givers, right? Like, there can be no life without us. We were given that superpower, and that we are treated as if that superpower means nothing. Without women, there are no men. And so there have been studies that have shown that a woman that in the workplace can lay her eyes on her children are 80% more productive. Why wouldn't people want that? Because it's cheaper to offer abortion access. It affects the bottom line. But if we really think about, this woman's movement, I always say, all these years, and we still haven't solved this as women. We still haven't. What we're trying to do is be more like a man, and we are the life givers, and so when she say, I'm like, yes, this is so true. And specifically as Black women, who statistically it's harder for them to even advance in their careers, are being told, in order for this to happen, it has to happen at the blood of your children. Where studies have shown that a Black single mother making less than $35,000 a year is more likely to choose abortion, but a single Black mother making more than $40,000 is more likely to choose life.
I'm sorry. That's just stunning. A $5,000 difference. Wow. So even when a woman is engaging this process, like you mentioned, you said something about interviews, like flesh some of that out. Like how does it, like what, even from the interview process, are there already obstacles?
Yeah, so most traditional employers will not accept you to come in for an interview if you have a child with you, right? But why not? You know, in Zoom, especially in the virtual Zoom calls, you can't hear the baby, you know, or the baby is there. Certainly, there may be interruptions. But if you truly want to get to know the talent of the individual that's sitting in front of you, shouldn't you kind of look at how she handles everything in its entirety? So we have done interviews, you know, with the babies, with the moms. And you know what? Some of these employees that we brought on board, they are such superstars because we were able to give her a platform to share who she is and her vision and her talent. And so yeah, to Charlotte.
Ronnie, yes.
Point, yeah.
And you also, not just corporate experience, you also have military organizational experience.
As an hiring official and having panels of individuals that have sat on a hiring panel because I'm going to hire someone, there was an instance where we had a young lady come in and you could tell that she was pregnant. She did the very best in the interview. Her resume was impeachable. But yet I had 3 men on the panel that did not want to hire her because she was pregnant. I said, oh no, she's going to have the baby pretty soon. And they had all of this dialogue. And I thought to myself, if I wasn't the individual overall of this hiring action, this great woman that we did hire, she was awesome, would not have gotten a fair chance. So these biases that we see in the workforce, strictly because we choose to reproduce, doesn't make us any less effective in our ability to be productive. You know, now we have, now they've allotted for men to have time off afterwards. No one thinks about that. No, but it's always the woman that has the stigma.
Yeah, and I think the culture shifts on things. I remember at a time in my pastorate when some of our younger families were beginning to have children, and I remember maternal leave and father would be paternal, right? Paternal leave. But then I remember like shortly after, like 2 to 3 years later, I won't name the companies, but they started drawing back on that paternal leave. And I was like, man, all they did was like make a budget line calculation and say, yeah, well, I guess I don't think it's worth it. And so just some broader family implications. I hope we can press people into considering those matters at a broader level. So how we've tried to frame this panel is highlighting minority voices. And so as we turn the corner, I'd just be kind of curious, in your own personal experience, how have you felt like your voice has or has not been heard? Each of you. I'd be curious with each of you.
I'll start. Yeah, I think that where God leads, God gives grace. And so, you know, I have had amazing opportunities to actually share on national TV. I was a part of a series on ABC called Soul of a Nation, where they talked about faith and abortion. And I was able to share my story and share the work that I do and how I came to this place, on a national level, the barriers that I have actually found come from within the pro-life movement. And because nobody wants to talk about the systemic issues. I mean, honestly, you say systemic or you say anything about biases and people are just like, no, we don't want to have that conversation, because this idea that keeping it one thing is going to be how we reach people has never been proven effective. And so God has been gracious. He basically has said, I will show you the doors within the movement that are going to be open for you. You are to walk through those, but I'm going to take your message outside of the movement. And so even though there has been resistance there, I am grateful for the time prior to, doing this that I spent there, because I understand more or less like the pro-life culture and how individuals think and see this issue from various aspects. And I've been able to meet a lot of people from a lot of different places. And so I don't count it, a loss, or I don't count it discouraging. It just is.
Yeah. And I think when you bring up some matters, I mean, I'm sure it's just the reality of like getting some new carpet or painting a room is different than taking a whole house down to the studs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think when you lean in on some things, people immediately realize like, she's not talking about painting a room. And so then that's a choice and that's a consideration. When you're going to go down to the studs, you got to examine your money, my financing. Can I do this? And you got to just examine the will to do it. Like my wife, her name is Pat. We watch HGTV, and sometimes people's like, I want to move in Ready House. I don't want a fixer upper. Well, when you bring up some of these matters, it's saying, hey, this is a serious major overhaul we're suggesting. Just wondering, in your context, how has your voice been or not been heard?
Well, I will tell you, being a female in the military, in one of the first organizations where women were integrated into a male unit, an organization, very often you find that your voice is minimized. They want to minimize my voice capabilities, and then will convey the only reason why you're promoted so quickly is because you're a Black female. You've hit two things. Couldn't be anything that I did. It didn't matter what I accomplished. In their mind, they tried to minimize my achievements by putting me into a category of Black female. And I find in society, that is a major piece too, where they will put a Black female in the only reason why you accomplish that is because you're a Black female. Wasn't that I was an airborne soldier or air assault or had been a drill sergeant or all these things, accomplishments, and couldn't be that I've earned a doctorate degree. Couldn't be any of that. It's because I'm a Black female. And so often they try to minimize the voice. And that's what I found. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I was sent there and I had to set up a local depository account because we didn't want American currency on the battlefield. So to minimize that, we set up a local depository account and we use their currency. When I went there, he wanted the driver. He didn't want to talk to me, but I was the one to set it up. So I said, okay, we'll leave. We'll go to the other one. But I can understand that because that's Saudi Arabia. That's their culture. But to get the same types of treatment here in the United States of America, the home of the brave, the land of the free, is disheartening.
Annie, in your engagement, in your particular context, how do you think your voice has or has not been heard?
You know, I'm actually more of an introvert, so
So you want your voice to not be heard.
so usually I'm more behind the scene type of person. But you know, a couple years ago when I joined the pro-life movement, you know, I actually had to come clean with my abortion story that has been hidden for so long, because it's just one of those things that you didn't want to think about, right? It's so shameful. Nobody knew. It was a hidden secret. And when I finally got in touch with the reality and have to go back in time and travel with that, that's when I realized, you know, I need to do something in the pro-life segment. We need to make sure that the story is heard, that the redemption story is much more powerful than my broken story, regardless what my race is, regardless what my, you know, social background may be. You know, people look at you from the outside with their broken inside. We live in a world where everything is a picture perfect social media post. I want them to see my broken inside. And that was when my healing journey began. And because of that, they pushed me onto the stage to speak to people. And, you know, and I was quite terrified, you know, and even sitting here, you know, it's not a comfort level for me. But I realized that God challenges us to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Yeah. And, you know, so yes, I felt like my voices have been heard, and that, you know, my abortion story didn't define me. Yes. But if my abortion story can help unleash the others to begin their healing journey and then prevent others from making the same mistakes, then it's all worth it. You know, we do live in a world that is very instant gratification centric, right? Yes. We want a quick fix. We want to move in ready, turnkey house. We want everything to be, you know, done, ready to go, you know, but an abortion healing journey is a long, long road. Yeah. And the pro-life movement cannot be done without us really getting in for the long haul. And but transformation, though, in the way that the pro-life anatomy needs to be reshaped, it's also long overdue. We need to rethink and reimagine what pro-life should look like. And when we talk about celebrating diversity, it really needs to be a statement that we truly embrace as a pro-life movement, not just an ethnicity, but looking at the way things are done, looking at the way that things are being preached, looking at the things that, you know, there's more than one way to solve an issue, and collaboration in its true form celebrates diversity. So I'm looking forward to that. And I feel like Stand for Life, it's really beginning to, you know, embrace that platform and allowing more doors to open.
Well, I am excited to have had the privilege of standing for life with three sisters in the body of Christ. And I so like your words that the redemption story is greater than our story of brokenness. In our church, we use an evangelism tool called the 3 circles. And one of the circles is brokenness, which results from us failing to pursue God's design. But that's not the end of the story. If we will recover and pursue God's design, we are going back towards Him. And so I really like that phrase. And I hope that we will be able to encourage women to find abortion to be unthinkable and unnecessary. But I hope we will do it, number one, engaging broad voices in the conversation and considering these essential matters that you all have raised. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.